Welcome to the Tapestry podcast, where fashion stories are woven one thread at a time. I'm your host, Ina Korobkina, actress who played Luda in Dawn of the Dead, that pregnant chick who succumbs to a zombie scratch and gives birth to a zombie baby. So ironically, I have come back to life to birth this podcast, dedicated to exploring the blossoming world of creativity and beauty amidst the AI revolution. This program is brought to you by Jewel Branding Studios, a style consulting agency that helps you tell your unique story, one creative outfit at a time. Elliott Terral, welcome to the Tapestry podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
This podcast is dedicated to sharing fashion stories and discussing the transformative nature of clothing. I also have this theory I'm exploring that finding our authentic style, it's a journey, a series of moments that are woven together to create a rich tapestry that is our unique life. And so today, I am super curious to learn about your most memorable fashion moments and how they color your work as a sartorialist, a conjurer, and founder of your made-to-measure studio, Raconte. So my opening question to you is, as someone who loves magic and someone who can basically make himself a suit, any suit from scratch, what are the pieces that fill your wardrobe? What is your signature style, your daily uniform?
Well, my daily uniform, thank you for having me, first of all. My daily uniform typically consists of, I don't wear jackets very much anymore. And if I am, it's a casual jacket that I've made. But I'm almost always in a trouser, typically a single pleat. And I've started wearing waistcoats in place of the jacket, especially as it starts to get warmer. But I wouldn't say that there's a specific garment that I attach my style to. It's more a palette. I, as far as like a uniform goes, I prefer textures over patterns. So I work predominantly in a limited color palette, and then I'm adding different textures together. Like right now, I'm wearing a faux suede trouser, and this sort of denim shirt. I like that because, texture is something that is really magnetic, and I find that it gives people a sense of power when they're wearing something that other people don't know what it feels like. Like if somebody's looking at your clothes and they go, I don't know what that feels like, there's immediately this curiosity that's sparked that, like, people want to touch it. They want to touch the fabric and see what it feels like. And if it feels what they think it might feel like, or if it's softer or coarser. So I like to use things that have a little bit of texture because I find that it draws people in. Um, as far as like the cut of my wardrobe, it's typically a little bit more loose. I like something that's a little more relaxed. I like a higher waisted or higher rise trouser. I like a higher waisted jean. I like boot cut. I'm from the South, so I wear a lot of boots. It's boots in the fall and winter, and sandals or loafers in the spring and summer. But I think that maybe the most important thing, especially in the recent couple of years for me, is accessories and accessorizing and finding objects and pieces of jewelry that speak to who I feel I am, what my creativity is aligned with at the time, and every little bit, every little detail communicates something about you. And so the more coherent the pieces are, the more coherent the message is, the the more coherent your presence is in a space, and the more magnetism you might have in an interaction. And so I try to find things that are as authentic as possible, and it's been a long time journey. As you mentioned in your intro, it's all about the journey. Finding your authentic style is as much about finding your authenticity in general as it is anything else. And so I think it's a worthwhile pursuit for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. There was a lot there to take in the textures, the coherence, the details. You love magic. And I imagine that when you're dressing, you are dressing to carry magic tricks. So, no? Sometimes?
Uh,
Am I assuming?
I'm not, yes, I'll put it this way. I'm dressing to create a magical atmosphere, and that may or may not lead to me doing any magic. It may or may not mean that I need pockets. Um, I don't always leave the house with things in my pockets to do magic tricks because I can create a magical moment with the rings that I'm wearing or with the necklace that I'm wearing. And so I don't necessarily need the pockets per se or the pocket space for the pocket management. These are some inside baseball terms that you would know, but I would imagine most of the people listening don't know the magic inside baseball of like pocket management stuff. But I don't look at dress as props or toys. I look at dress as extensions of personality. And so for me to I don't choose my clothing based on what tricks I'm gonna do to get to your I think to get to the nut
Okay,
of the
that
question.
was my question. Yes,
Yeah.
because as we both know, I was one of the founders of Magic on the Go and online magic school. In the early
Yes.
days, I was the camera woman, so I saw a lot of secrets of how magic works, and a lot of it has to do with pockets. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that because a magician never reveals his secrets, but that's why that question was there. It's like, do you design as someone who loves magic and also is a sartorialist and can make the suit from scratch? Does that come into play? But then at the same time, a lot of your clients, a big portion of your clients are magicians.
Mhm.
So do I'm gonna skip this question because I feel like it would give away secrets.
Rather than getting into the nuts and bolts of how magic tricks works, I'll say this. What I dress the client for what they have their goals, right? For what they want and what they need for their context. And then I have my goals that use their goals as constraints, but then I achieve my goals, and my goals don't really have to do with, whether or not the magic trick works. That kind of, it just has to if that's the point of them getting a suit. But that to me is like a check mark box that I check that really has nothing to do with why they're coming to me, other than the fact that I know a lot of that methodology and can do it without having to ask too many questions. But they're coming to me really because, like, yes, they can get their secret pocket installed, but more than that, they trust that I know what it's like to be in front of an audience creating mystery, and that I will be able to help translate that gift or power to them by means of their clothing.
I imagine it's very useful knowing magic and then having clients that come to you so they understand, you understand them. So you were saying about the extension of personality. So when a client comes to work with you, what is the first step to discovering their personality and figuring out what kind of suit to build them? What do you go off of?
Well, the first step with a client is usually a video consultation. So it's a free hour that we spend together just getting to know one another. And through that, and there's not a hard rubric. I'm looking for the essence of the person. So I'm looking at their body language. I'm looking at the cadence of their speech. I'm looking at the volume of their speech, how much eye contact they make, how they move their body. I'm looking at these subtle cues and listening, of course, to what they're saying in response to the questions that I ask to build this kind of ethereal understanding of the person that they more than likely and almost usually don't have of themselves. So through that initial consultation, I know, okay, this person does not need help with confidence, or this person may need a little boost in confidence. And so that is going to steer my design decisions more than, uh, you know, what they need on stage, right? But on top of that, I know how the lights are going to hit the fabric. I know if it's going to be able to move. I know if it's something that you can wear 3 times a week if you're on stage. Not all fabric is created equal, and just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's right for you. So all of that's really helpful. But that initial consultation helps me build those constraints for myself and my goals based on this person's personality and their preferences any style influences they have, whatever their vision is for their performance. And that performance can be, as you've said, a magician, it could be a speaker, it could be a surgeon who's, one of my best clients is a surgeon and he wears a suit into the office for his meetings with his patients because he feels that that is more professional than meeting with them in scrubs, helps him feel more confident in his ability to perform surgery. So that's that first initial consultation is I get an understanding of who this person is, and then I craft my own goals for this person within those constraints. The second step is the first fitting. This is where we actually meet. I take the measurements, they try some clothes on so that I can get an understanding of, what they want, how their body posture is related to the patterns that I work with. If they have high or low shoulders or forward or backward hip placement, things of that nature. We'll also do the fabric consultation in this first fitting. So this is where we choose our fabric, our buttons, our lining, any monograms that we're going to do, if there need to be secret pockets or not, things of that nature. And I come into that with recommendations. So I'm a concierge tailor, so I go to people's homes or offices and I have thousands and thousands of fabric swatches, but I can't carry them all with me. So based on that initial consultation, I make my choices and I only bring a handful of books because I know this is what you're going to be happy with. Now from this limited palette, let's make an informed choice together that I can sort of guide you on. Because, I am an expert in this area and I understand and know what cloth to recommend and how it's going to perform such that they're going to be happiest. And typically people are excited about that. Not very many people want to sit and peruse thousands of swatches. So in that second fitting, we basically design everything and measure everything. And then our third fitting is either a follow-up with a basted garment or it's a delivery. And if we need to do any final alterations, we can get those done. But from that point on, it's kind of just, I sort of relate it to like your hairdresser or your barber, right? You build a relationship over time and you see this person a few times a year. And over that time, you get to know each other better and more deeply, and you have this trust and shared language. And so then more than client transactional relationship, we build more of a collaborative relationship, which is what I'm really interested in, on a fundamental basis.
Wonderful. I mean, the level of depth that you go to discover that human being, because it's not surface. It's like we talked in our phone call, it's subtleties. And to get to those subtleties, you really need to get to know the person over a period of time. Now, with fabrics, 1,000 different swatches, that's a lot to consider. And as we both know, as we're stylists, each piece of fabric, each color tells a story. So how do you figure out what story to tell and which fabric to choose for your client?
Well, that comes from a combination of their goals and my goals. So let's say, for example, a magician comes to me and they need to, this is their show suit. They're going to go on Penn and Teller's Fool Us and perform. Okay. So I know that this isn't necessarily the suit that they're going to want to perform in every single time they go on stage, but it is the suit that they want to perform in when they're trying to make a particular impression. Okay. So that's going to account for, I think, as much of the styling as anything, in that the fabric that we choose is going to be something that will last a lifetime. So it's not going to be too delicate. This is a performance suit. People need to be able to move. They need to be able to react. They need to not feel like what they're wearing is too precious in order to be fully self-expressed. So we're not necessarily going to go for the highest end Super 180 silk because no matter how beautiful and luxurious and, shiny and luxurious it feels or looks, it isn't going to be something that they get value out of. right? So it's about finding the value for the client. On the other hand, a client who comes and wants something that is super luxurious, maybe it's for a wedding, or they're just somebody who has very fine taste, then we're going to go towards composition that is a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more delicate, because this person is going to take care of it and they want that very sophisticated level of tangible experience. So for each client, it's different, but typically the fabric that I choose is based on the composition. So usually I would say 80% of the time we're using all natural materials: wool, silk, linen, things like that. And they can be blended together. But it's only in cases where somebody is like, they're a client that I make nice suits for, and they say, I want something stretchy like golf pants that I can wear on the plane. Okay, great. We'll go towards that synthetic fabric, that sort of technical performance fabric for you. But even that, I still would err on the side of using what this vest is made out of, which is a high twist Super 130s wool open weave fabric. So this is an excellent temperature regulator. It's crease resistant because wool has a memory in the fibers, and so it wants to go back to its original position. So this is resistant to creasing, and it just lasts, and it's comfy. So I don't know if I answered your question. I may have
You
rambled a bit,
did, you
but
did. There's so many layers to consider. Again, it's those subtleties and really thinking through the end purpose of the piece of clothing. How how did you fall in love with fashion? What is your earliest fashion related memory from childhood?
my earliest fashion related memory from childhood is probably watching David Letterman on The Late Show in a double breasted jacket he was wearing open and blown out trousers, meaning there's not a front crease on the trouser. And it just looked so cool and effortless. And it was combined, right? Like nothing stands alone. So there was a context of David Letterman being David Letterman and also wearing these clothes. And so to me, as a child, those two things went together. They're not separate things, they are one thing. And so I wanted to be in front of people, making people laugh. I wanted to stand there and be the center of attention and talk into a microphone to a camera and wear suits. And so I did as a kid. That was my whole hobby as a child, was wearing suits. And that comes from, Bob Barker and David Letterman and JR from Dallas and just these like suited main characters or presenters or TV hosts. And I just chose all of my own clothes. I was very particular about what I was going to wear and how it was going to look and what accessories I was going to wear with it. And that continued from, like, I don't know, the age of 2, 3, 4 up
That
until I
young.
was in, yeah, up
That's
until I was in
amazing.
elementary
You were born
school.
a sartorialist.
I was, yeah. And I stopped in elementary school because I got tired of answering questions about it. Kids would walk
Really?
up to me and go, "Why are you wearing that?" And I got so fed up answering that question that I stopped.
Oh no. Yeah,
I know, isn't
that
it?
was the question I had for you because I had the pleasure of interviewing you for a blog that I used to write, Little Daily Gem, and we did an interview and you said that you wore bow ties to school and I just when you stand out as a kid, there
Yeah.
is a chance that you're going to get picked on. And so they just asked questions or did they pick on you?
I don't have a clear recollection of that answer, but I think that any attention that I received as a child that was not good was received badly. So, like, even if it was just curious, it wasn't good. And so I was just like, no, 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 I can't do this anymore. It's too much. It takes up too much mental space. And now I have to like explain myself, which felt weird.
Got it. So, do you feel like you lost your authentic style at that point and started dressing to fit in? Because that's usually what happens. I've spoken to a number of people about this, and this happened to me as well. Between the ages of 10 and 13, we get very self-conscious. You know, those teenage years. You start to lose your authenticity, you try to fit in, and then the journey, part of the tapestry, the moments that we weave together, is reclaiming that joy, reclaiming that authenticity. And part of that is through the way we dress. So, did you feel like you lost that? Well, it sounds like you did because you stopped dressing up to answer questions. When did you reclaim that? What was that journey like?
I think that, uh, yeah, I was really active. My parents had me in a ton of after school participation things. I'm an Eagle Scout, so every Monday night was Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts. I was in tennis practice and I played tennis until college. So I was an active kid, and it was both financially unreasonable for me to dress the way that I dressed as I grew up, and also just kind of logistically difficult to go to Boy Scouts wearing a suit. There were lots of factors. Again, there nothing is singular or alone in this. There were lots of factors, but yeah, as I started to grow, there was uh, a lot of self-esteem stuff that was like make myself smaller so that I can fit in, so that I don't get picked on. And there was also some self-esteem stuff that was like, I'm gonna be so generic that there's nothing that you can say, and I'm gonna be the person that is having opinions about things. So, every aspect of our personalities is in one way or another a defense mechanism. And part of becoming authentic again is reworking and retooling those defense mechanisms so that they're not hurting us, they're helping us in adulthood. And so it took probably until college, when I had enough uh, disposable income where I wasn't going to be judged by my mom or my dad or my grandparents about how I was spending my money, which is that's what I believe. That isn't true. I still got all of that judgment, but uh, it
Very
was
honest of
in
you.
but it was in college that I started dressing again. And that was, and maybe even late high school, but it was like, okay, I have an allowance, and I am going to order. This was like right at the beginning of online flash sales. I don't know if you remember Gilt.com,
Nope.
but it was like online TJ Maxx essentially. uh but like flash sale, so it was, for one day or for 3 days this brand would have like 60% off and whatever. So I started buying little things here and there in an effort to sort of find my style. You have to make all these mistakes as somebody learning to get a handle on it, but it introduced me to interesting cuts and silhouettes and materials, and I started to develop my palette really significantly, and not just with clothes, but just in general, my taste in high school and college. But college really was where it took off.
Hmm. Interesting. So, when did you fall in love with magic? And did that inform some of how you dressed? I know I asked this question differently earlier, but the foundation of it, the beginning of it.
Yeah. Yes and no. And yes, in a way that is probably not what you expect. So I got into magic when I was in middle school, I think. Yeah, middle school. I was like 11, 12, 13, somewhere around that time. I just picked up card tricks. I had learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube in Boy Scouts. And when you're a child and you can solve a Rubik's Cube, that gets a good reaction. And when you can solve it in under a minute, that gets a great reaction. And so there was there was this aspect of like, oh, doing stuff for people that they find interesting or impressive is fun for me. And so I started learning card tricks, and that is such a deep and profound well of exploration that it just kind of consumed me. And so the way that that influenced my style early on was like I wanted cool card stuff. I didn't want like a playing card tie. I didn't want like, the Vegas casino theme stuff. I wanted stuff like what David Blaine was wearing, which was like a charcoal gray t-shirt that had a king's head on it, or whatever. Something like, I don't know, just mysterious and kind of punk rock, but not like Chris Angel goth, more just, I don't know. There was like an earthiness to it that I think spoke to me. Um, and there was a brand when I was in college called Jackson Jokers, and they did these like really nice quality t-shirts and hats and stuff, but they were like playing card themed. And
Cool.
Blaine would wear them, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So I started wearing that kind of stuff. But then I would wear that and a baseball cap and a blazer and selvage jeans and boots, and that would be kind of my sort of hipster college look. Um,
Sounds
but
cool. Could be popular now too. I would wear that now.
yeah, I mean, I was never making bad choices. Occasionally I would make mistakes, but there's just it's like anything. The more deep you get into it, the more subtlety and familiarity you develop. You can always just tweak something to make it 1-2% better. And so I could look back at what I was wearing then and go, oh, wow, this is as good as most people today, but it's not even close to what I would want for myself now.
Mm.
Um, and that's just because I was a student of it forever and never stopped being a student of it.
Yeah, a student of life. We never stop learning for sure. So you admire David Letterman with his microphone in his hand, and then you got magic tricks in your hand. Did you ever get a microphone in your hand or just
Oh
magic tricks
yeah,
and the
I
Rubik's Cube?
mean, yeah. When I was a kid, I had a microphone that I would use, and I called it my gentleman. Would say, would say, "Ladies and gentlemen," and I thought that the microphone was called gentleman. Um,
Cute.
and then when I was uh, shortly after college, I started my own podcast called Magical Thinking that was about the art of magic. And so I did have a microphone, and that was a couple of years. It was 83 and some change episodes. I think in total there were almost 100, but
Are they
83
still out?
numbered episodes. They are still available on SoundCloud. They used to be on Apple, but I think if the podcast is inactive after a certain amount of time, it gets pulled off the charts. Um, but I still have people reaching out about that podcast and saying what a big difference it made for them, and so that feels good. Um,
That's
and I'm
great.
considering
Yeah.
maybe getting back into it. But yeah, I did get the microphone eventually.
Well, it's amazing what we're drawn to as kids. Like it's so intuitive and instinctive. Like I've always loved to be in front of the camera, and here I am acting and podcasting and stuff. So, but I was drawn to that as a kid. I've always loved the camera. Now, who is your favorite magician, current or past?
Um, Merlin.
Why?
Uh, I, so just to piggyback off of what you just said about what we're interested in as children, um, The Sword and the Stone was my favorite Disney movie growing up. And I just loved that Merlin character. He was so whimsical and so knowledgeable and was this, profound educator. And that really spoke to me. And it's only been kind of more recently that I recognize quite literally what an influence it had on my life because it is my path. I am a magician who wants to be a wizard. I am an educator. I've taught people all over the globe how to do magic tricks. I had a, very successful podcast in the magic industry. So I sort of became the Merlin character, and I was just looking back at some term paper. I was cleaning out an old hard drive and was looking at some term papers I had written in high school. And all of them relate to the same things that I'm interested in now. And more so now, I think, because I am just really trying to live and lean into my authentic self. And my authentic self is Merlin from The Sword and the Stone.
That's so great. As we get older, we can look back and go, "Oh, wow. So that was the journey and that was the spark from my
Yes.
childhood, and here I am now living that spark, that initial spark." Now, I love how mysterious you are. You're not too active on social media, and when we were talking on the phone, you said there's certain clients that you've actually have chosen not to work with. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that? Because I think there's a transformation process that happens when someone comes to work with someone like you. There is a desire for change, a desire to put on a new suit, a new armor, and start living a new, more empowered life. That's what clothing helps us do.
It
And
can.
so it can, yeah. But unless the mindset has been addressed,
Yeah.
no matter what beautiful suit we put on, we can't step into that empowered reality. So, would you mind delving into the moments where you have chosen to part ways with clients? And the only reason I ask this question is for
Sure.
my audience to be aware of the moments where they sabotage themselves, where they are going towards a goal and they so want to change their life, but something stops them. What what should they be aware of as they go through this transformation and might tap into clothing to help them transform?
It is easy to spend money instead of taking responsibility. And so when I have clients that are, let's say, they're working with a stylist who comes to me and I work with them and I make them the thing, if they come back and I put the thing on them and they look great, but they aren't carrying a confidence about how great they look, they're not necessarily a client that I want to continue to do business with, because when someone says, "Wow, that's a great suit. Where did you get that?" If their response isn't, "I know it's beautiful. I love it," and their response is instead, "Oh, is it okay? Is it yeah," that's not good for my brand. And it's not necessary. And that sounds so selfish, but it really is about, I want somebody who's taking what we do together seriously and is interested in the aspect of it that is greater than I bought a nice suit or I have a custom suit. And so there is an aspect of it that is, are you spending money so that you don't have to do the work? Or are you spending money because you've done the work and are ready now to honor yourself? And if I have clients that aren't honoring themselves, they're not people that I want to work with, because they're not someone that wants to collaborate. They're someone who wants me to fix them. And I'm not licensed to do that. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have everything figured out or that you need to have the best self-esteem or the most confidence. I'm not saying you need to be done to get clothes. What I am saying is that taking on the the very real aspect of transformation that occurs with new clothing that's made for you, or with any kind of deep investment in yourself or selfhood or how you're perceived, taking on that responsibility and aligning your words and your actions with that new change that you're making is the only way to make a difference in your life. If you don't align your words and your actions, then you're just continuing in the same patterns that you have in your life, whether or not they're getting you good results or not. And so if I'm working with clients and I can see that this person is someone who does not take responsibility for themselves in their life, and that they just are spending money to as a steam release or a gas release on their self-esteem, I'm not I'm not interested in that. I don't want That's not the kind of person that I want to work with. It's not the kind of person that I want to be around. And so
Mm.
I fire clients. Now, it's I think that it's important too that there's a conversation there. I think that it's important that, I, as a coach, as the person making the clothes, says, this is how you need to feel about this, but I can't make you feel that way. You have to
It,
do your own internal work to get to that place.
yeah, it almost sounds like there's the frequency of the clothing, because now we can measure the frequency of inanimate objects, and they've measured the frequency of wool, of silk, of linen. It's a higher frequency. And then if you make something from scratch and you pour your effort and love into making something quality, that's another raise in frequency for this piece of clothing. But if the person hasn't worked on their mindset, they might be depressed. And so the two don't align. So it totally makes scientific sense that they might be wearing a beautiful suit, but shrinking and not fully owning it, not fully owning that image.
Yeah. And you talking about frequency goes back to what I was saying about coherence, right? Like, I'm looking to create coherent spaces, and that includes and is related to and is made up of vibes, literally the vibration of isness. And so, yeah, if I'm pouring my energy, my effort, my love into our experience together, into the process, into the garments, into the delivery, and the reception is not greeted with, love, and then there's discoherence, and I'm not here for it. That's, you got to take care of yourself. I don't necessarily need to be the person fixing someone through clothing, but because specifically it's not my place. If they came to me in another way, in another setting, and wanted maybe a tarot reading or something like that, then we can have a conversation that's a little bit more profound. But if they're just a client coming to get a suit, it's not, it is, I would be crossing a line by encouraging them to be or behave differently, or to, uh, if people aren't ready to take responsibility, suggesting it feels like an attack.
Mm.
And so there's just not a good way to do that. You either are ready or you're not. And lots of people that are ready don't know they're ready.
That's a good point. Well, but then
You
there's
know,
the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, so how do you mean that they're not ready, and how can you see that they are ready?
I think the difference is, like, there are some people who are already self-expressed, or who have already found their authentic selves and don't know how to translate that through clothing. And so then as stylists, we provide that service and we educate
Oh,
them in that way. There are a lot of people who don't know anything about anything and are just kind of bumbling around through life and are looking for people to fix them, and are looking to spend money on that. And when you come to me for clothing and you want me to fix you, just because I have the capability doesn't mean that I am required to, or that it's a good idea for me. I have to maintain my own boundaries. I have to maintain my own sense of self and presence. And in order to do the work that I need to do for the life that I'm trying to build and the reality that I'm trying to create in the world, I can't necessarily get bogged down by people who aren't going to do the work themselves. I'm happy to be a guide, but I'm not going to be a donkey.
well said, well said. So this has been a very fascinating conversation. And before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. The name of your company is Raconte. Did I pronounce it correctly? Raconte.
Yes,
Can
Raconte.
you please share the origin behind that name and what inspired you to name your company that?
Well, I would be happy to. Raconte came from a variety of influences. I think that predominantly, it's the root of raconteur, right? The archetype of raconteur in my mind is someone who's louche and easy and conversational and magnetic and attractive and interesting, and can tell a story that really enchants people. And so Raconte was this way of, embodying that archetype from a branding perspective. So the tagline for Raconte is sartorial storytelling. And as someone who has been interested in storytelling my whole life, not necessarily sit around a campfire and tell a story, but about the magic that happens in the space between people when there's communication happening, that kind of storytelling. It just seemed like a good fit. It just seemed like a nice fit.
It
So
is.
that's how that came about. Yeah.
It's a
Although,
beautiful.
at the same time, nobody knows how to pronounce it. And the website is raconte.boutique. There's no .com, so that throws people off. So part of it is I'm mysterious, and the other part of it is just, it's hard to build a business that that is logistically sound.
Well, hopefully this little conversation today helps get the proper pronunciation out. And
Yes, thank you.
but stay mysterious. Stay a wizard. I think it's a beautiful little moniker that you created for yourself and a beautiful story. Yeah, because there's so much noise out there today, and you either fight that noise or you become, again, that word authentic, your authentic self, and have your expression and not have to prove anything to anyone and just explore moment by moment, day by day, and do what you love. And that's obviously what you're doing, and it shows.
Well,
So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for appearing on my podcast. Life is a series of moments that are woven together, and I'm so glad that we were able to weave this little thread and tell a little story and learn more about Raconte, made to measure boutique.
Well, thank you so much, Ina. This is really lovely. I wish you all the best on the Tapestry podcast. And yeah, let's go out and make a beautiful world together.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tapestry podcast. Chances are, if you resonate with the content I shared today, you might be on a journey to finding your authentic voice and your unique message for the world. If that is the case and you're navigating speaking in public, then my Styled to Speak program is perfect for you because the outfit we custom designed for you together will help you make the most out of the 7 seconds it takes to make that first impression on stage. Speak with conviction and allow your signature stage outfit to add to that conviction. Visit jewelbrandingstudios.com to learn more. That's JEWEL brandingstudios.com.